Welcome to Correcting Conversations, a podcast dedicated to supporting individuals on their journey through the justice system. I'm your host, Stanley Frankart, and in each episode, we'll be exploring the challenges and triumphs of the justice system, corrections, and reentry, offering insights and resources, as well as inspiring stories from those who have walked this path. So, whether you're a judge, prosecutor, legislator, returning citizen, family member, or a professional working in the field, this podcast is for you. Together, we will uncover tools and strategies that are much needed to build a brighter future and reduce recidivism through our conversations. Join us as we navigate the complexities of our justice system, corrections, and reentry, as well as celebrate the resilience of the human spirit with us. The goal of this podcast is to educate, inspire, and offer practical support to a diverse audience, which includes those who have been directly impacted by the justice system, as well as professionals working within it. Let's embark on this journey together, one step at a time. I'm your host, Stanley Frankart, and today we have an amazing episode in store celebrating and honoring second chances. Second Chance Month just ended in April, and this is a time where our country reflects on the importance of giving individuals who have been justice involved the opportunity to rebuild their lives, contribute to their communities, and break the cycle of recidivism. Second Chance Month is a great time for me as a returning citizen just to reflect and ponder on all of the amazing accomplishments that have occurred in my life since I've come home. And today, I am thrilled to have Robert Green joining us. He is the executive director of the American Correctional Association, one of the leading organizations that is advocating for excellence in the correctional profession. Robert brings years of experience to this field and a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities in corrections. Welcome, Robert, and thank you for being here.
Good day, Stanley. It's great to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, today's conversation is going to be a little bit about us exploring the significance of second chances in general, but also discussing the role of correctional professionals in fostering successful reentry environments. And I also, Robert, want to dive into a little bit of what the American Correctional Association is doing to support some of this in the criminal justice system. So we'll be touching on ways correctional professionals can be active participants in helping individuals rebuild their lives post incarceration. So, Robert, as we kind of have rounded out Second Chance Month, would you mind sharing with us the significance of this month, specifically for correctional professionals and justice involved people across the United States?
Well, this month we round out the Second Chance Month, and then we're directly into National Correctional Employees Week. So it's a time when we're talking about this amazing field of professional corrections, and that's really the mission and the focus of the American Correctional Association. While I spent 40 years of my career in both pretrial sentenced corrections and then under Governor Hogan in the state of Maryland as the Secretary of Public Safety, the work of corrections, the narrative, anytime we have weeks and months of commemoration, it creates an opportunity for corrections to tell the story, to adjust the narrative of corrections, what we are trying to do, and quite frankly, what we do around the country. That's the really important piece of this for me, and the opportunity to come and speak with you. We get to talk about the work, the myth, and the reality. But the corrections profession around this country and those that are doing it and that we so humbly represent, individuals in leadership roles that are leading states and sheriff's offices around the country, to the individuals that are working 11 at night to 7 in the morning in the best interest of corrections. It is a 24/7 business, whether they are a food service staff member, a case manager, a social worker, correctional officer, custody and security, working in the mental health and behavioral health and medical fields of corrections. It is an opportunity to really talk about myth and reality of how all of these disciplines across the scope of professional corrections really grasps this reality and this mission that anywhere from 91 to 92% of the people that are housed in our facilities and in some level of criminal justice supervision are returning to the streets of our community. And it really begs the question how we do our work has a direct impact on the criminal justice system. So those are the significant opportunities for us. Really tell the story, adjust the narrative, and make sure people know the men and women that labor in this field do an exceptional job every day.
That's amazing, Robert. Appreciate you sharing so exquisitely what that looks like. And, you talk about telling the story, and I would love to hear more as to what role corrections professionals play in creating that environment that fosters the reality of second chances for individuals who are coming out of incarceration.
Well, when you think about, I think the opportunity to tell our story. I've been in this field for 40 years, and there are very few accurate documentaries that really focus on the reality of the incredible work that's being done in America's jails, prisons, pardon me, reentry facilities, community correction systems, judicial systems, drug courts, diversion programs, deflection programs around the country. So that is the real important first pieces. There is much happening. These dedicated professionals are working in the field of education, substance abuse treatment, mental health and behavioral health treatment. When we begin to look at some of the challenges that individuals who experience incarceration have in returning to the community, they are all of them. And there's not one set recipe of success for an individual. I often refer to our work at the American Correctional Association is just to help make sure that everyone sees and understands the menu of services that are available, what's happening in one part, perhaps in one part of the country or one state or one jurisdiction, and they can experience a program of change that's working in another area. ACA creates those opportunities for conversations and that opportunity for personal presence through our conferences, two of them a year. We're getting ready to go to Denver August 21st to the 26th and create that space where we're sharing 60 to 70% of these workshops or what's happening now with strong metrics and data and the professionals telling their story, and more having those stories very closely connected to individuals that have experienced incarceration and having both voices at the table to do that. It is a really, really powerful opportunity. And then taking that other space in our conference and in our work to talk about innovation and emerging ideas and programs that have great promise. So we want to create and really lean into the knowledge that we have today, but we want to create new knowledge and new opportunity and new focus. And that brings a lot of partners to the table, which includes our community, every part of the criminal justice system, law enforcement, corrections, service providers, health and human services, all of them, and how we create those menus of services that may best serve an individual, and sometimes at their most desperate hour. But we also want to make sure that as we're doing that with all of those services, we're also recognizing victims' rights and making sure that all of those pieces of a true restorative justice system are in play.
That is phenomenal, Robert. And it sounds like, yeah, as you already spoke to, there's a lot happening. And contrary to the myths and the narratives that are out there, I believe ACA is leading in some of these conversations. And the conference, I'm looking forward to it myself. And I think that the data and the metrics you mentioned, right, that help drive some of that innovation. I'd love to kind of explore what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in those realities of second chances, and how can we as a society better support those who have served time?
I think the most significant challenge is making sure that people understand the real story of what is occurring. So, I'm going to lean heavily on my personal experience. And while the American Correctional Association, we're a convener of great ideas. The folks that are doing this work every day, directors of corrections, from shore to shore, sheriffs, jail directors. And again, they are the individuals that are digging deep, creating the stories, and then we convene as an association. Of course, we have our bylaws and how we want to represent this profession, but it's really creating space to tell these incredible stories of what's happening across the country. And again, when I lean in on my on my experiences, things like bringing tablet education to my state and bringing that to a jurisdiction, and having individuals increasing their reading, tested reading levels by 3 grades in 90 days based on the continuous access to these programs, these opportunities, whether it is in their living space, in a day room. How can we create, and using that tablet technology that wasn't something we had access to 20 years ago, and now over 1 million of those tablets in institutions around the country, creating opportunities for learning that is self-paced with incredible outcomes. When you and I recall when I first started delving into education and corrections, there is in our mind no such thing as correctional education. It is mainstream education being delivered in a correctional environment. And when you start looking at data like that, the ability for individual to be able to read and write at a higher level, and being able to do that through this, if you will, the peer-driven process. That's a fairly incredible story, and educating why it's important, the outcomes of that, and then you can get into self-paced programs that will assist you perhaps with substance use, family and living, to programs of parenting. All of those things that help really look at the whole person. This idea of a wraparound change and wraparound service that helps an individual prepare for life beyond incarceration, or life beyond criminal justice supervision. It's really important.
Absolutely. I love that you share that. I know plenty of people who have benefited from the educational programs offered in the correctional system, and I myself am a byproduct of that, and that's where I got a big portion of my personal education. So I definitely see American Correctional Association as one of the champions, right, around this cause of really truly supporting individuals and equipping them to be able to re-enter successfully. So, Robert, if you wouldn't mind, could you share some of the key initiatives that ACA has launched to promote reentry programs and the broader goal that ACA has around some of that reentry initiative?
Well, initiative one is creating the space for the conversation, creating those opportunities for just national thought leaders, uh, research to be married with programmatic outcomes, to be married with data, to be married with follow up in the community. So we want to make sure and again, when I say we, ACA, again, telling the story of the individuals across this country and state and local government that are doing just that now. All right. I want to make it clear that these initiatives are led by the practitioners that are doing the work in the field. So we want to be able to tell that story, to show that progression and that evolution. And then we want to be the space where individuals can come and further explore that resource. We want to be a space where companies and providers of service whether it be a piece of equipment, a program, a nonprofit program. We want to be the space that we can help them incubate that innovation to make sure that it fits, it's ready to go in correctional facilities, it's ready to be delivered. We in corrections, I've seen a lot of incredible programs come and then they are not sustainable. And how do we do that? And again, Stanley, you and I have had very frank conversations, and you having experienced incarceration. The last thing we want to do, are individuals that have experienced incarceration, start a program that is not sustainable, because it becomes a lifeline of change, something that you grab onto, and then it goes by the wayside. So how do we do that? And I think, again, that's ACA's role, and to support, defend, and tell those stories. It really is where we rest as an organization, because the incredible work that is happening from a Florida to a Washington State, from California to New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and there is no shortage of incredible stories of workforce development. We used to think in the context of it's great that we have an individual ready for a job when they leave incarceration, or go back to the community and even are under supervision. My goodness, now the mission of many of our providers are, no, the job before they depart, and having that connection with all of those services. So you think about that evolution. But this is work that frankly, Correction Stanley has done for many years, quietly, behind the scenes. um, um, One of the great initiatives of modern corrections with our leadership across the country is to really open the doors, and bring our legislators, our community leaders in to see what we're doing, how we're doing it, and to really have that aha moment. And I can assure you, some of the most gratifying moments in my career were when an individual was, well, this is not what I saw on TV. This is not what I expected. We need to create a lens that is unfogged by myth, for people to see what we are doing, how we are doing it, how we are interacting with people in a human services business. But there is an acknowledgement that this is tough, difficult work. And that acknowledgement of, for the people that do it, can at times be a dangerous work. We have to look at the full scope of acknowledgement of what we are doing. And again, that evolution of opening doors, and allowing folks, community, to come see. And now you have communities in some of the most successful reentry programs across the country have a strong community participation in those programs. And for me, it's very gratifying to watch that unfold, and watch these stories every day. If you look at our social media, if you look at our social media is about telling the stories of success, telling the stories of change, telling the stories of how we are actually and factually moving as a system. There are some incredible stories there. And those stories are driven by corrections professionals trying to make a difference.
That's amazing. That is amazing, Robert. And I think that very highly of some of the professionals that have touched my journey along the journey, right? And how they've made a profound impact on my life. But then I think about some of the early people in their career, right? That maybe just be getting started in the correctional professions. And they're maybe sitting in some of those very challenges that you just shared. And so, Robert, what is some for correctional professionals who are working directly with justice involved individuals? What are some practical steps that people can take to help prepare an individual for life after incarceration?
Well, I started off as a correctional officer. in a local sheriff's office. And the practical steps are is that um, in your journey as a correctional professional and growing is always remembering and that you're dealing with people, people with very diverse backgrounds and experiences that brought them, but the criminal justice system brought them to our doors. I think what you would find is that you're going to find staff that treat individuals with great dignity and respect, and have conversations, and that understanding that every interaction with an individual, correctional employees, watching what they do. So let's think about their journey in a facility for a moment, right? They are constantly, and with the incarcerated population, in a constant state of interaction with people. That interaction may be in a housing unit, may be in a cafeteria at food service, and a program, in a classroom. Um, uh, but that these are individuals that are constantly interacting with people. And, I quickly realized that I was also a conduit to help connect the message of an individual. If you and I were spending time in a correctional facility, and me observing you and you sharing conversations with me of what you were experiencing in that housing unit and services that you need, corrections employees become that conduit to help connect. And there were many times that, even in my early career, I did not realize that, when I encouraged an individual, listen, okay, what you just said to me is that you don't have your GED. We can help you get started on that journey while you're here. And by the way, I had a builder tell me once that if we can help people get their math skill or that portion of a GED, it applies very uniquely to, what do they say, measure twice and cut once, right? And the individual told me, he said, Mr. Green, if we can help people get that math skill, math on a board, I can take that person from $15 an hour, making cuts, to putting them, or $15 an hour as a laborer, to being one of our material prep individuals. And by the way, I'll pay them $35 an hour. So you think about those experiences, and then how do you relate that back when I'm back and I'm in the facility? Hey, Jim, um, let's get you started down that GED path. Get on the list for that. We become, and again, that's not an epiphany for any of us that work in the field. That's what people and staff are doing every day, helping to make a connection to this wealth of programs that are happening, in corrections. And again, whether they be education, workforce development, any of those programs that are going to help create a path of connection, that don't bring them back to incarceration and break that cycle.
That is phenomenal. And Robert, I appreciate so much you sharing just the expertise and the experience of being, a professional in this field for over 40 years. And as I think about some of the stories that you just shared, the simple conversations, right, that lead to those catalytic kind of second chances for individuals. What are some success stories or examples from your tenure, where correctional professionals or ACA initiatives specifically have made that tangible difference in someone's reentry journey?
For me, it's every day. It's every day, and I live and worked in the communities in which I served. I was very blessed to spend my entire career in the state of Maryland, in two jurisdictions, and then ultimately as Secretary of Public Safety. Those stories were almost every day, Stanley, and that you would hear from an individual that would see you. Perhaps it was at Home Depot, and the individual comes up and says, "Hey, remember me? I'm doing well. That's my company van out there. I'm a builder. And I people we use a lot of last names in corrections, right? And
Yes,
it
sir.
was always, hey Green. They didn't get high to, hey Green, hey Green. Yeah, that's my company van. I got a really tremendous job. And then I remember back, and perhaps some of my interactions with that individual were not as stellar as that. But to see that people grow, we change, and we create opportunity. And that's one of the big messages for you and I sitting here today, is I want people to know that professional corrections in this country, we have incredible individuals creating opportunity to engage. But in a human services business like this, it takes it we need the incarcerated individual to seize that opportunity as well, right?
Mhm.
And help paint that path. But those kind of stories, I've sat in PTAs with individuals and watched them raise their children that we had met under different circumstances. For me, all of those are absolute successes. And those stories are by the thousands across this country with correctional professionals that experience that. I've just too many to list. Many will grab your heartstrings, to know that when you saw them in perhaps a state of addiction and addiction's recovery, and then to see them as an adult, and have them tell you it was that moment, it was that opportunity, it was that activity. But let me say this very clearly: 9 times out of 10, it's a person that made a difference, Stanley. Right?
Yes.
It's
Yes,
like
sir. Yes, sir.
that individual, that officer, that individual says, "Hey, come on, man," or "Here is an opportunity." And I think one of the things that perhaps the community in general, doesn't understand, and perhaps undervalues, is that daily interaction with incredible people. And it's not the Sylvester Stallone Lockup USA movie that you watch on TV, or it's not a series that you're watching where the portrayal is an entertainment media portrayal. It's a factual engagement of incredible professionals. And Stanley, just this week, having now on 4 occasions during Correctional Employees Week to be able to just go and experience the stories. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible stories, and we're getting more of them every day, where we're celebrating people that are making a difference, individuals that have experienced incarceration, celebrating their work. And it is work. It is work to change your life. I think all of those stories create a positive picture that the United States criminal justice system, the correction system, I should say, that we are evolving and working hard to support people. And at times, in what can be dangerous and violent circumstances. I mean, as we also celebrate conversations around second chances this week, we also acknowledge that corrections itself lost 22 individuals in the field, in line of duty deaths. So it has its challenges, but at the end of the day, when we can create stories, narratives that are real, that are focused, that are deliberate, we are all better for it, because that helps us evolve and continue to make sure that all of our systems can always be the best that they can to serve people.
Mm. That's really, really powerful. And thank you for sharing that moment of honor for the 22 individuals who just lost their lives in the line of duty. That's a heavy reality, and I think people face it every day, right? And they face it with optimism. They face it with the hope that one life like mine can be changed for the better. So again,
Absolutely.
I thank all of those individuals for their service. I thank send my condolences to their families and their communities who are grieving that loss, because I know at any point in the juncture when you lose somebody, it leaves a void. And so my condolences to them as well. So as you're thinking about what's ahead, right? Where do you see
Right.
the future of second chances in the
Yeah.
correctional system? And what are some of the biggest opportunities for improvement? But also, how can correctional professionals be at the forefront of some of these
Right.
innovations you're talking about?
Well, hey, yeah, this is an exciting time and a moment, and again, I can never remember a time that my glass has not always been half full. That's just who I am and how I am. But in corrections, things that we are beginning. It's not a beginning; it's a realization around data like recidivism. Wow, that is always an incredibly interesting data set. By its very nature, the word recidivism is a negative outcome. So, when you think of a recidivism, if Rob Green were incarcerated 5 times last year, and through services programming and opportunity, I was incarcerated once this year. That is success. But under the terms of recidivism, that will always be a negative number. And if we realize that relapse can be part of recovery, and for many people it is, we've got to be measured in, is every element of reincarceration, rearrest, return to program, is that a negative number? And I would tell you, it isn't. It isn't always such. So the field is looking at social determinants of health, and other data that we can engage that perhaps doesn't have always the negative connotation of recidivism, because recidivism masks success. It is a real number, and people calculate it differently. I am not debating the necessity of it, but within recidivism there is another number, and we need to make sure that we're giving rise to change that can occur there. And how do we do that? So within, some would call it desistance, social determinants of health. But in what areas can we make sure that an individual is receiving programming to make the biggest impact in their life? And that is, again, we're relating now back to the menu of services, having them available, those opportunities in the community of connection. And where do we do that? We don't want to become just GED focused, because if an individual has their GED, that perhaps is not always, education is not always the focus of what is giving rise to some of their problems in the community. So you want to be able to be prescriptive. I would tell you, new methods of intake assessment, diagnostic, really being able to help an individual that has struggled, even pinpoint their own problems. How can we help them dive down into it with some level of recognition, understand what those triggers are, and how we can create programming for the best success? We're now seeing this overlay of AI that's helping us in corrections, and there is a place for AI in corrections, just making sure that it fits within the appropriate barriers of human interaction and assessment. But how can we better look at the data, the flow, the outcomes, the holistic pieces? I think is really important, and then really drawing that parallel between what service here and what service here need to both be in place to support an individual going out the door. And when I'm talking about services, it's not always services for that person. I don't want to I don't want to dig too deep there. It's about what, the holistic piece of family, children, their children. There is some generational issues that we have to recognize, admit to, and embrace.
Mm.
And I myself have at one point had 3 generations of the same family in my local jail. I had a grandfather, father, and a son. And we could take probably half an episode to talk about the aha moment for me of that exchange when I had all 3 of them in a room with me. And again, I don't make excuses for the people. I listen to the story and understand the reality of where we were and how I can impact that. Looking too deeply at cause, I need to look at outcome. But understanding some of that causation is important. We've evolved the number of systems that are investing heavily in social work and heavily in workforce development and heavily in transitional care and family reunification. And now again, it's just not corrections. It's the specialty courts that are occurring with our judiciary, courts that can really help us create better navigation as a correctional entity with the courts and with the community of an individual. Reduce recidivism, increase success, and all of that has a dollar figure that we can, we're impacting, and lowering that interaction. That dollar figure allows us and our leaders and our government leaders to invest differently. But corrections is an investment in and of itself, and we must also make sure that um, um, our leadership understands we've got to invest in the appropriate management of these facilities around the country. And again, part of my job is to tell that story of how we do that.
Rob, wow. I mean, just jam-packed with wisdom, with nuggets, with valuable insights. I mean, practical wisdom. I loved what you said about how recidivism masks success. And you talked about one of those key components of social determinants of health. You talked about pro social support systems. I think that is such a valuable investment that ACA is intentionally focusing on, as well as the many other things that fall under your purview, especially telling the story of how correctional professionals are investing not only their lives in this work, but their intentionality, their focus, and their efforts. It's so powerful. And Rob, I couldn't thank you enough for sharing the insights and the important work that you're doing with the American Correctional Association to support second chances like mine to be successful. It's very clear, Rob, that the correctional professional is playing critical roles in playing out transformed lives and ensuring that successful reentry is available and accessible for individuals who have served their time. So thank you so much, Rob, for your expertise, your wisdom, your insight. I definitely would be amiss if I didn't ask this question from you directly. What's one thing, if you could share with our listeners today, what's one thing you would want to leave them with as they continue this journey through this system?
The power of hope. Um, and probably not what you expected to hear, but we're talking right now, putting together really the first of its type, a World Faith Conference that we're going to bring to ACA. But it's really focused on where is the place for hope in systems. And I would tell you, regardless of what I have done in life and what I think most people do in life. If we don't have hope that comes along with that, if I were training to be an athlete, hope that I could achieve my goal and the realization that I could, and being able to be systems where we foster hope for our staff, we foster hope for the individuals that are inside our facilities. We create in environments where I'm learning from Dr. Byron Johnson that's just how we can create situations where people can flourish where they're at. And don't judge how, quite frankly, how they got there. And that's a tough thing when we think about victims and we think about impact of family and we think about the totality of the cost of incarceration and crime. Our criminal justice system is there for a reason, and it's to protect. But also our ability to create the opportunity to hope and to flourish wherever you are and the circumstances you find yourself. And that piece of hope applies to our staff. I think probably what brought me back every day in a tough business as a young 20-year-old correctional employee starting was, then hope. I was making a difference. And then you found those nuggets of hope and change where you were making a difference, maybe making a difference to the man or woman standing next to you in uniform, and your colleague, making a difference to the person that was looking back at you through the bars or the glass. But that hope, and how then hope became, okay, now we're getting our nuggets of feedback that we are, it's no longer hopeful that we're making a difference. You get the nuggets of reality that you are making a difference. And I think that is really, when I'm listening to these stories of correctional staff and individuals that have experienced incarceration at a recent reentry conference that I was at, hope is just so critical. And when we don't lose hope, we allow the best in us to flourish.
Such a powerful piece right there, and I'm looking forward to an invitation to that conference. I think it's going to be a dynamite time, a great time. I leave you with this proverb. It's a wise saying that I once heard, that hope deferred crushes the spirit. And I think that what you're doing to really highlight the reality that hope is presently and should be readily available for folks that are, not only system impacted and justice involved themselves, but for the individuals working in this field day in and day out. The hope that lies before them, I hope and I pray, gives them the ability to press forward in those difficult, challenging times. So, such a great
Agreed.
word, right? Such a great word, Rob. I appreciate you sharing that. For our listeners, so whether you're a correctional professional or someone interested in criminal justice policy, or someone like me who is navigating their second chance or currently incarcerated looking for their second chance, we encourage you to keep advocating for second chances, keep sharing the stories of hope, and supporting reentry of individuals back into society. As always, please visit the American Correctional Association's website. Learn more about their resources, some of the training opportunities, and remember, second chances don't change lives, they transform communities. Thank you
Well
so much for
stated.
tuning in. Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much, listeners, for tuning in to Correcting Conversations. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be discussing some of the conversation Rob was sharing with us today about how individuals navigate the justice system. We'll be hearing from a juvenile judge. And until then, take care and keep the conversation going.
Thank you.